Hey guys, how's it going? Today I want to make a quick video giving out some tips for beginner software engineers and computer science students. It appears that most of my subscribers on YouTube are either beginner software engineers or computer science students, so I often get questions like what programming languages to learn, what areas to focus on, and things like that. So I thought I'd make a quick video giving out those tips and help you guys out. Before we begin, I want to take care of a few housekeeping items. So if you want to jump directly to the tips, feel free to jump, so the timestamp is in the description. So two things I want to talk about before we begin is first, the giveaway that I promised for the Google Home. A lot of people ask me when that will be happening or when the live event will be scheduled where I pick the winner. I'll be doing that in October, probably first week of October or maybe second week of October. And then that's when I'll have the live event, and I'll let you know when it's scheduled so you have enough time to kind of join in and stuff like that. The second thing is, a lot of you have requested videos on problem solving and interviewing tips and techniques and strategies, that kind of stuff. That will not be one video. It'll likely have to be a series of videos that I'm working on. This takes time. So again, that will be sometime in October. Just watch out for that. Maybe the first few videos I'll post them in October. Before that, in September, I have a lot of things going on, so I just won't have time to do that. So most of the things that you're looking for will be coming in October. So thank you for the patience in advance. All right, without further ado, let's get started with the tips. So tip number one is do not obsess over learning a programming language. What I mean by that is the programming language, while it is important because that's the language you'll be sort of talking with the computer, it's not the most critical part. What I mean is you could learn Python, you could learn JavaScript, you could learn Java, you could learn C++, but eventually the differences between those languages is not the most critical part. You can figure those out pretty quickly. So my suggestion is to just pick one, whatever you've already started with or whatever you find most intuitive and easy to understand, or whatever your school is teaching you, that's fine. Don't worry about what programming language is the hottest one in 2020 or what will be the biggest one in 2025. Don't worry about that. Because once you learn one programming language, switching to a new one is fairly easy. It takes not even a few weeks, all right? Think of it as learning a language. So you've spent 20 years, 30 years, or however many years learning one language, whatever your native language is, right? Like, so now you've understood how to communicate, what the subject is, what the predicate is, what the grammar is, what syntax is, what adverbs are, what adjectives are, those kind of stuff, right? Once you learn that, now say you want to learn a different language like German or Spanish or Hindi or whatever, right? All languages almost always follow a similar pattern. Maybe there are big differences between Latin and non-Latin languages, but apart from that, like the communication pattern is fairly similar. So the exact same principle applies to programming languages. Once you learn the main constructs of a programming language, like assigning variables, doing loops, doing conditionals, methods, procedures, like return types, data types, that kind of stuff, all other programming languages are very similar. So don't stress out about programming languages and focus on learning the core, which is going to be data structures and algorithms. And I'll get to that in a different point. Point number two, if something that you need to focus on right now would be to pick an IDE, which is the tool that you use to program stuff. Pick one that is popular. And again, this is also not critical, but I think it becomes quite advantageous because regardless of what language you'll be using, you will be using an IDE, right? So for example, in my case, I can write code in Java or a little bit of C++, Python, JavaScript, and C#. And generally all of those have different IDEs if you want to. So in my case, because recently I've used mostly C#, I ended up using Visual Studio, right? And Visual Studio is an amazing IDE. Like, it has a lot of things built in. There's a lot of effort that goes into building the tool. There's a big team that Microsoft devotes to Visual Studio. So naturally I used it, I liked it, and I got dependent on a lot of things with Visual Studio, right? So now if I switch to Python, I'll suddenly feel that I'm like very dependent on Visual Studio, which is not a good thing, right? Like, now I have to not only learn Python to get used to Python, but also add the headache of learning the IDE and the things that now the IDE is not going to do for me, right? Like all the shortcuts and stuff. So the benefit these days is there are a lot of awesome open source IDEs that will work with everything. And few examples, at least A few years ago, the most popular one was Sublime. Everybody was using Sublime. And now, with Visual Studio Code being so popular, if you start using Visual Studio Code right away, it doesn't matter what you use. You can get Java to work with Visual Studio Code. JavaScript automatically works with it. You can use C# and .NET Core and use that. You can use Python in Visual Studio Code. So what happens is if you get a job and you've always been developing in Java and now you need to switch to Python, chances are very likely that they already use Visual Studio Code, or they will allow you to use Visual Studio Code. And now you only have to focus on learning Python. You don't have the headache of learning a new IDE. A lot of psychological benefit to doing that. And obviously you don't waste time learning a new IDE, and you can primarily focus on the programming language, right? So I highly recommend you do that. Third part is, do not skip your data structures and algorithms. Like, I cannot stress this enough, especially all you guys that dream of working in a big tech company like Facebook, Microsoft, Amazon, Google, Uber, whatever that is. You will need very deep knowledge of data structures and algorithms. So if you're in school, a lot of schools have 1 or 2 classes, if not more, dedicated to data structures and algorithms. And based on my experience, sometimes the intro classes like Computer Science 101, and then you'll go to data structures, like that will be level 200 class, data structures 1. But then data structures 2 will have some of the more advanced topics, and those will be electives. Those are not required to get a degree, but you can. And a lot of students skip those. Same with algorithms. The first level class will probably be a 300 level class. It'll be algorithms and analysis, or algorithm design and analysis. And then the second one, the more advanced one, where they talk about hardcore algorithms, is an elective, and a lot of students skip it. Don't do that. Make sure you have room to take all your data structures and algorithms class. And a lot of times people ask me this from an interviewing perspective too, like, hey, I have experience, say I have 8 years of software engineering experience, but I really struggle with problem solving and like data structures and algorithm questions. How do I improve? And the problem is the same thing, is you are struggling with problem solving and algorithms question is because your foundational knowledge of data structures and algorithms are weak. I'll give you an example. So I know many software engineers that if I tell you, if you've built any kind of web app or a website, if you've ever used jQuery, JavaScript, that kind of stuff, if I told you, hey, I need to build a quick search text box, and you've used this in like your browser or various like search places where you start typing and it'll start auto-completing for you, right? So you start typing, say maybe you're in Amazon.com, and then you start looking for like some sort of a guitar, right? Like, so the moment you type GUI, it'll do some fancy stuff, and then it'll start saying guitar or guitar something or guitar strap, guitar pick, like that kind of stuff. So generally how that's implemented, if I ask someone, hey, how would you do that? The general way, and this is how I did it when I was just starting too, is like, hey, JavaScript or jQuery has an autocomplete library. So you just use jQuery.autocomplete, right? Like, so and then you give it a list of things like, hey, here's a list of my inventory. And then you can set it up saying like, okay, the moment the user starts going past the 3rd character, then start doing the autocomplete, and it's very quick. It'll filter it out for you, and then there you go. You just implemented autocomplete, right? But that's not the case. That's not how autocomplete works. You've implemented a library that has implemented autocomplete, but how does autocomplete really work, right? So the basics, very basics of autocomplete is a data structure called try. Try is a form of tree, which is also a data structure. So you basically split each word into characters, and you can use hash maps to make it fast, things like that. But you basically start at the starting character, and as the user types, you kind of start traversing the tree. Now here's another topic. I said traversing a tree, so now you need to know how to traverse a tree, right? Not only a simple tree, but it's a different kind of tree that is called a try, right? So this is how autocomplete is implemented. I will not go to the exact details of it, but just to implement a very basic version of autocomplete, you're talking about some form of a dictionary hash map, tree that is a different variation called try. You're talking about tree traversal and all sorts of things, right? You could implement autocomplete using jQuery, but if you really need to understand autocomplete, you have to understand all these data structures, and some of them are advanced data structures, right? This is why it's critical. And when you apply to big companies like Google and Facebook and all, they expect you to know the implementation, not just how to use it. anything you've used it, they expect you to understand how it's built, right? That's the reason data structure and algorithm is so important. So the fourth tip that I have is obsess about practical implications of what you're learning, or what happens if the volume of users, or what we call scale, is to be applied to whatever you're building, right? And as a student who's just starting, as a computer science student, or as a software engineer who's just starting, something like this is difficult to wrap your head around, but I would still encourage you to at least think about it. It's okay if you don't understand how this works. The least you can do is at least come up with a few situations where what ifs happen, right? And I'll give you an example. Say you're building a to-do app. Everybody loves a to-do app. So you've learned the programming language, you learned that a to-do app can have like a list as a backing storage, you've learned the basics, and then now you've built it, and then someone can add, it connects to a database, and it's all cool. But now think about, what's the fun in building a to-do app that only 5 people use, right? Eventually, anything you build, you want to be able to be good enough that everybody uses it, right? Like scale. You want lots of people to use it. So now, immediately, the first thing to think is, what happens if 1 million people use my to-do, right? Like, what happens? Like, it's okay if you don't know the answer. If you're just beginning, that's fine. But start training your brain to think about what ifs. What if this happens? What if it could be about security. What if, do I need security for my to-do app, right? Like, does the user need to be authenticated? What happens if someone's to-do leaks out in the public? That's like a huge security issue, privacy issue, right? And think about like the practical implications, right? Like, oh, someone taught me a tree data structure and they just told you in a very academic way, in school especially, right? Start thinking, or go home and then look for, hey, where are trees used? And then you'll see in applications like autocomplete, searching, like different kinds of data structures, or you use a SQL database, like a lot of indexing there happens as B trees. So that kind of stuff, and you may not know how they're implemented, but you'll get an idea about, oh, these are the applications of trees, right? And I think that mindset really helps you understand things as you learn more and more. And then the final tip I had is put in the number of hours. Eventually, software engineering is a balance of knowledge, some skill, and some people even say some form of art, I suppose. But all that is achieved only through practice. Like, you have to do it. You have to put in the hours, right? And when you're putting in so many hours, you're doing something, it builds up your stamina. And also, regardless of what background you came from, why you studied computer science, like maybe because your friends studied computer science, or maybe because your parents wanted you to study computer science, or maybe you just loved computer science. I don't know. But regardless of what background it is, you want to build passion towards doing it. If you don't enjoy it and you're just purely doing it because somebody else wants you to do it, or your friends are doing it, or you think it's a lucrative salary in the future, whatever, then you will not like it, because it's a lot of like sitting down and coding type of thing, right? Like, yeah, there are like meetings and designs and stuff, but like those are only fun when you enjoy it, right? So I suggest putting in the hours, having fun with it, and going beyond your classroom. If you just do what your professor tells you to do, or if you just do what your job requires you to do, you won't grow, you won't learn. Have that habit. And this goes hand in hand with the last one about being curious and going beyond, is go home, do your stuff. And this is kind of counterintuitive too, because like college itself is hard, and when you begin, if you're struggling, so you don't have really time, and I'm telling you to do more, but trust me, as you go, like the barrier to entry is very steep in the beginning, but once you start getting good at it, you'll find that things are a lot easier, and then your curiosity will start paying dividends there, right? Like with anything, like you've heard of the 10,000 hour rule, right? Like, if you want to be the best at anything, you need to put in the hours, and you have to work on it and enjoy it, have fun. Like a lot of people ask me, hey, do you have to work 8 hours a day? I mean, the answer that I normally give is, it depends on your job, what your team wants. Usually not, but some days are longer, some days are not. But the answer in my head is, why does it matter? Like, I love doing this, like if I didn't work 8 hours and my job, whatever, finished in 6 hours, I'll come home, I'll do something else. Maybe I'll play some video game, but I'll eventually probably pop back into the computer and do something else, a side project or something like that, right? So invest time, enjoy doing it. And if you need side project ideas, I have another video that talks about side projects, but put in the hour, because when you eventually go, you want to work on a big company, top company, the people that you will be competing with live, breathe, and eat this stuff. Like, they literally love it. So if you want to compete, either you're like some absolute genius, in which case good for you, but normally for most of us, you just need to put in the hour and enjoy it and be passionate about it, and that shows in your interviews too. So that's it. To summarize, number one, don't obsess about which programming language to learn. It doesn't matter. Pick a popular one. If I had to suggest, because you haven't learned anything, I would say pick Python or JavaScript. Those are good languages to learn. But if you have learned something else, don't worry about it. That's not important. Second, pick a familiar IDE that works across all programming languages. In this case, my recommendation would be Visual Studio Code, so that you don't have to context switch or learn 10 different IDEs. It will work with everything, and it's open source, so it's cool. Number three is please get your foundational knowledge of data structures and algorithms done. If I had to pick one out of all these tips that I gave you, I'll pick this one. Like, that's how important it is. And I gave you the examples to why it is important. It's required for tech interviews. Focus on that early on, and you will not struggle later. Number four, think of practical implications of everything you're doing. Think of scale, think of how it would change if security concerns were changed, if 1 million users were added, that kind of stuff. It's okay if you don't know the answers, but build curiosity and think about how it would be used in a practical setting, okay? Number five is just put in the hour, build the passion, so that you build your stamina and you thoroughly enjoy doing this. Work on side projects, like that kind of stuff. And I think with these 5 things, you'll be set up for success, regardless of whether you're a student or a beginner software engineer, or even probably a little bit of experience under your belt. I don't think either of these will hurt you. They will only benefit you. That's that. That's all I had for today. If you like the content, please subscribe, and I'll see you around.